Hi, you guys. The last two financial paths to peace have been part one and part two. This is going to end up being in a part three. And the reason I'm making this part three is I had to cut a lot of stuff out of part two. That video was 2.5 hours long by the time I was done recording it, and I had to edit it all the way down to 58 minutes. So I had to take some stuff out. Based on some of the people's responses under that video, I decided that it was important to add some of that back in. So I'm going to do that now. You are going to hear some of the same stuff, but there is going to be some new material, so I really hope you'll bear with me so that I can kind of clear up any confusion. But I also want to add this before I start that. As far as your living expenses, and me in particular, and I thought I made this really clear that this isn't exactly how everybody's going to live or everybody's circumstances, and a need can change depending on what circumstances you're in, but you just have to be really strict with it. So pertaining to me, I can say 100% I've lived on the $1 to $2 a day. And I've done it for sustained periods of time. This is not just a YouTube video. I lived on $2 a day for 24 hours. This is not just a YouTube video. This is a lifetime. And so I've done that. I know it's possible. So I can attest to those living expenses being under $100 a month. I can. Now, if my circumstances were different and I had a family and I had a home, things would be different, right? And some of the needs, I might have more needs and I could justify them saying that they are a need. However, I would go through this brain process to make sure it's truly a need and not just a want. And if it is a want, that's totally fine to have it, but you have to call it a want so that you're always measured in your specific budget. I first started doing this in my early 20s, and my whole idea was just to be cheap. Like, that was the mantra that would go through my head. And I know some of you may not like that word, so put frugal or thrifty in there if you have a hard time hearing the word cheap. But that's all that would go through my head. Self-reliance and cheap. Just be cheap. Then I made categories, like the savings and the giving category and the investing category. But things would happen and those would get depleted. It wasn't working out. So later on, in my mid-20s, let's say, I added more categories. I traveled around the world in my late 20s. I continued to live on that $1 to $2 a day, very, very, very cheap. I took the savings that I had earned, and that was my travel fund. That was my big expenses for my tickets and so forth. The investments that I had invested in things that were very safe, kind of like a mutual fund basically. So that I left behind to just continue to grow. So while I traveled, I continued to hone this $1 to $2 a day, $1 to $2 a day. When I returned from traveling, that's when I decided I need to focus on my future building, that extra 50%. That future building category, like I said, has 3 different subsets to it. One is the survival fund. I had already purchased a lot of my food for that year storage I told you about. So I was almost complete on that. That was pretty much done. I had some initial costs now that I'm back in the United States. I did do a job for a while, and then I bought my car. So then the third subset of that is the career building or the furthering your education. I already had my business degree, so I was going to start a small business, and I decided that I would write a book about my travels because so many people gave me feedback on how it helped them and changed their life in some ways. So I thought, you know what, that would be a really good thing for me to do. So I had all these different ideas of a business I could start, of a book, of just a variety of things. And somebody mentioned to me to do YouTube. YouTube was just beginning, so I didn't pay too much attention to it. So that was my plan. And I started on the book. But during this time, another option, if you will, was introduced to me. And again, sorry, but I'm definitely going to be vague about this. Another option was introduced to me where my life could go the direction that I was planning on, and I could start my future building, or I could do this other thing which would help a lot of people. So I thought. And I chose to go the other path to help the people. Unfortunately, it ruined me in a very drastic way, and then I didn't want a future. I didn't care about a future. In fact, I would prefer not having one. And so Years and years went by of being in that deep hole, and the hole was just getting worse, and I knew I wasn't going to be released from the hole. I was just going to have to live there till I'm like 85 and die a natural death. So this idea came about like 10 years after being in this hole. And mind you, all this time that I'm in this hole, I am thinking, what could I do with my life that would give me some sort of purpose and value that would make me want to live. 10 years passes, and something came about where I thought, maybe that could work. It was risky. I only had so much money left. I had never been into debt up to this point in my life. I'm against debt. I had always bought things like vehicles outright. I've never been in debt, never borrowed. But I took that risk simply because the depression was so deep and I just needed something, and it was starting to make me want to get out of bed. So I did it, and I lost. I lost everything. I lost what was left, which was just money, which honestly wasn't the biggest thing in my life anyway, so that wasn't, but it was another hit. So I'm not going to talk about my debt really at all, probably ever. That's a personal thing. It just is what it is. I only mention all of this to you now because I've done the $1 to $2 a day living. I can attest to that. I've done the charity. I can attest to that. I've done the savings. I can attest to that. I've done the investing. I can attest to that. I've done the survival fund. I can attest to that. I've done the initial costs. I can attest to that. And I started the future building, but I did get subverted. So, I've never bought a house. You're going to have to decide what exactly needs are in your circumstance. What I'm trying to relay in everything that I'm saying about this financial stuff, you don't have to do it my way. You can fluctuate with the percentages if you need to. But the whole point is the principles of living frugally, of being self-reliant, of having your needs met, of knowing what a need versus a want is and calling it that, in order to have ultimate control over what your finances are. And one of the big reasons I'm even talking about this, I do believe that, it's valid for me to have my own opinion and to share my life experience with you, and maybe you can gain something from it. But a lot of people 2 years ago asked me this question, well, how did you live on $1 to $2 a day? So I'm really just trying to answer their question. But I do think that there's something that could be possibly applicable in your life. If you find that my numbers or my experience is totally outlandish, then that's okay. But I hope you enjoy the video, and I hope it adds something to you. Okay, bye. Okay, now on this last category, obviously things change. Level 4 is a house, so it's not even like an apartment. Obviously, it's not just for first month and last month's down payment and that sort of thing. You have additional things that you have to have in order to make your house function, and you also have the down payment of the house and all that sort of stuff. So there will be some added categories in this. I'm going to break this down into two different. I have a friend that shared with me what she pays for her husband, and her 3 kids living in a home. And then I'm going to share at least an idea, because I want you to know, if I got to this level, still being single and still being with this same mindset that I've used in the other 3 levels, how I would go about it. First, let me share what this friend of mine shared with me. Now, she is a very good budgeter. She's really strict. Perhaps not as strict as me per se, although I think she's pretty strict. And you'll be surprised. Her husband, her, and her 3 kids, and this is what they spend per month. Now, this is pre-2020, so take that into account for what it's worth. Anyway, she bought her home, so obviously she had a 10% down payment. I can't remember how much her home cost, but that would be a one-time payment. Remember, everything that I'm talking about right now, yes, you have your initial costs, which I've shared with you, but not only that, the idea that I'm trying to get across is that you have initial costs, but anytime you can take a bill and make it a yearly cost, And I know that might sound counterintuitive, but the thing is your budget and your money and your discipline gets eroded by 1,000 small purchases. So what you can turn into a big chunk that you know that you've done and you've paid for and the year is clear in that area. So for example, the car insurance, right? I use that as an example. When I had a car and I was paying car insurance, I pay yearly and it's out the door. Honestly, my phone bill, my communication bill, I pay that yearly and it's out the door. And that way I live on very little every month. There's only obviously food is a reoccurring cost. You can't get away from that. Your hygiene products, they do go out. They're a reoccurring cost, although not as much. My philosophy is to have as little reoccurring monthly costs as possible, to have very little bills as possible, period. But some things you buy once, they last a lifetime. Some things you buy once, they last 10 years. Some things you buy once and they last at least a year. So anyways, here we go. So she bought a home. I don't know how much it cost, but the down payment, 10%. But that is a one-time cost. So boom, that's done. This does not really pertain to us because this is your monthly budget. This is not a yearly and 10-year budget. This is just a monthly budget. So that down payment's done. So now she has her monthly mortgage, insurance, and taxes. And that comes out, she's got a 2,000 square foot house, and that comes out to $1,000 per month. Again, this was like pre-2020. I don't know that you'll find those prices quite as much now. And she has really good credit. She's got some perks, I'm sure, to get it to that monthly price. But her husband, 3 kids. Their electric bill every month is $70. Their internet is $40. Their water, their sewer, their trash is $85. Their car insurance is $15. So again, for me, that car insurance wouldn't have been a thing. I would have paid that off as a yearly bill. Her phone is $25 a month, and then food for all 5 people is $500 a month. Again, like I said, she's very thrifty. And she will buy in bulk and she will cook simple meals, and she's just really rigid in that particular area. And then her entertainment budget of $100. So that puts them at $1,835 per month. Now, notice that there was no charity in there, which I believe should be done. There was no savings in there, which I believe should be done. She didn't tell me how much her gas was, and I don't know that you can always calculate that perfectly every month, but you could probably get a roundabout if your life is very repetitive. Anyways, if this was me and I was still single and I got to level 4, a house, first of all, I probably wouldn't live inside of it because I would rent the whole thing out. I am a single person and I don't require a lot. My needs I don't need it. I don't need it. And then when you turn on the heater, you have to heat this whole big area. I just don't need it. One person, I mean, a 2,000 square foot house. I do have a single female friend that, well, I did a while back, but, she lived like that. And then she did rent out some of the rooms, but sometimes not, because she wanted some privacy. But her air conditioning, her heating bill was spread throughout that whole entire house. The internet, like, even though you're single, if you're going to have all these conveniences, you're still going to have all these costs. So for me, I probably wouldn't live in it. But even if I did live in one of the rooms, then I'd probably make sure that the prices of the other rooms covered my mortgage. The reason I'm saying this is because I would still want to try to live free. I would still treat it like the mentality of living in a tent or living in the car or the van. I would have to have my down payment, obviously, but then that monthly mortgage bill, that down payment, like I said, is one and done. That is not a monthly cost. So we're talking about monthly costs. My monthly cost, I want it to be free. I want to live in that house for free. So I know people who have done this. One way or another, you can get to a point whether you have to have 2 or 3 properties, so the rent for those properties pays for the property you're living in. I know a guy who's done that, and he's got 2 kids, him and his wife, and he has like 2 or 3 properties. One property's just dirt, so he rents it out to like big rigs, so they pay him a monthly fee for their space to park there. And it's like 10 times the amount that he actually has to pay for that plot of land. So then that extra goes for his monthly mortgage for his family. So he's living in his home for free. So there's ways to do it if you're really strict and really budget wisely and don't require a lot for your life. So for me, I would want my shelter to be free. So let's go through this again, right? The water is free. The food, now if I get to that point, even if I get to the point of a car or a van or something like that, food is one thing that will go up in my budget because I do have some health concerns. It's not really that. I mean, it is. It is. I need to do it. But at the same time, that's not necessarily what motivates me. I just believe it's right. I believe that God gave us a body and He intends us to take care of it, and I'm not taking care of mine right now. And during this 15 years, there was a period of time where I ate really, really healthy, like really, really healthy, and I learned a ton. So I'm anxious to share that knowledge with you guys, but I'm not at that point right now. But during that time that I ate really, really healthy, it took about 4 or 5 months, but it was the first time where I felt like there weren't clouds in the morning, like I wasn't being suffocated with like in such deep depression. I just felt an alleviation simply by what I put in my body. So I know that that's important. I know that that's important. And that's the first thing I want to do when I have a place to cook. That's the thing with specifically with your food. If you have shelter, you can buy in bulk food, right? So that means your food can be cheaper because you can buy in bulk. It also means that you have a place to cook it so you can eat healthier. I look forward to that. Even if I get into a car that I already have in mind, I already know the kind of car I want, to be able to make at least a very small little kitchen area so I can start eating healthy as soon as possible. And then, yeah, I would prefer having a van where I have an actual kitchen, where I'm standing up, where I'm like, just have a real kitchen. Anyways, so food, the price will go up for me monthly. I don't think eating healthier has to cost more, especially if you're just eating the standard American diet. Most people are paying a lot more for the junk food, and if they ate healthier and simpler, it would probably be cheaper. So, but in my case, since I'm eating so cheap and I would be adding some things, I'm just not sure exactly what that food budget would come out to, but that's why I project the 150. I'm doubling it to be generous. So water is free, food is 150, shelter I would work towards making that free. Clothing and hygiene, again, like once you have so many pairs of clothes, I just don't think it's certainly not a monthly budget. I don't even feel like it's a yearly budget. Once you have clothes, they last for years and years and years. They don't have to go out of style. Maybe every once in a while you buy something new, but I'm just not like that. I grew up, I got hand-me-downs, and then when I moved out and, I don't usually buy new. I always buy in the thrift store. And when I do it, I'll buy a few items and then I'm done. I don't do it for years. So I can't remember the last time I bought an item of clothing. It's got to be at least 20 years ago. Anyway, so this is really just hygiene at $10 a month. I doubled it. I went from 5 to 10 because I would like to wear some makeup. I would like to look a little bit better. I would like to present myself better. But there again, to be honest with you, I still have makeup. I still had makeup from when I was in high school. Now, obviously, mascara, any woman would tell you mascara is not going to last that. So I'm talking more of the eyeshadows. I've never worn a lot of makeup. I put on like some lip gloss, and then I wear eyeshadow, a little bit of eyeliner, some mascara, and I'm done. So the mascara you do have to buy every so often, but it would be a yearly cost in my opinion. The eyeshadow and the eyeliner, that's not even, I can go years. So again, like I'm just being generous. 150 for the food, hygiene $10, but I don't actually see these costs going up. Certainly not monthly. So I don't really know why I put $10 actually. Like I'm just trying to I think people think that the way I'm presenting this is unbelievable, so I'm trying to placate just a little bit. But to be really honest with you, I don't care if I live in a big fancy home, right? Like a big home that's beautiful and fancy and expensive. I still only need shampoo, conditioner, and toothpaste and floss. Those are the things that run out that I need, right? I guess I need toilet paper, so maybe that's where, Then communication, the phone bill, which was $20, at least in my past it had been $20. When I had a phone, I could just tether to the iPad and I could use all the internet from the phone data. Or I could buy an iPad that has a little mobile slot where you can have that on there, and that's only $20 a month. So then the bill would only go up to $40. The only reason I would do actual internet is if I had a family and I had people living with me and I wanted to share that with everybody else. Then that would change. But me being single, I either tether off my phone or I get an iPad that has, if I'm really really sick of tethering, I don't know why I would, but or if I never get a phone and I'm just using the iPad, then I could get one that you're able to do cellular with. Transportation, again, the car would already be paid off. I would already pay the car insurance for a year, so my only cost on that would be gas every month. When I've had my car in the past, I want to say that my monthly gas was maybe $25-30 a month. My charity could still be $10, or I could up that to $20 a month. Okay, then you've got your miscellaneous and entertainment. Now, I know if I was living a normal life and, living in this house or living on the property, because again, I'd probably rent the whole house out and just live on the side. But even if I was living in a room and I had a normal life and I was gaining some intimate relationships again and close friendships and things like that, then yeah, I'd have some sort of entertainment. She, for her husband and her 3 kids, put down only $100 a month, so that's pretty amazing. But if I was still living kind of consolidated like this, I can go on hikes, I can go walk on the beach, I can watch YouTube videos, I can watch a movie, I really enjoy conversations. That conversation that I had with that guy the other day that lasted 3 hours, that was very entertaining to me. I enjoyed it, and there was no money spent. I don't usually spend on entertainment. I don't. I can't tell you the last time I spent money on a movie, or I don't find a need for that. However, if I was with a big group of people and they all wanted to go do something, if I felt like it was okay with my budget, then I would go. But in the past, even when I was in college, I was living a very strict budget. That's why I was able to go travel around the world when I graduated. All my friends were like, what? I was able to do that because I was so cheap. And all my friends, we'd get together on a Friday, Saturday night, and they'd want to, go to the movies. And so at the time, that was like $8 a pop or something. And then they want to go out to eat to a P.F. Chang's. I would go to the P.F. Chang's. Okay, this sounds embarrassing, but again, I was very committed to being cheap and saving money. I wasn't saving to travel. I didn't know that was going to come about in my life, but I was saving actually to start a career. That's a different story for a different time. But, they'd go out to the movies, and then I'd just meet up with them afterward for the conversation and time shared together. And then, I didn't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, but they're my friends, so they know me, right? But I didn't necessarily want anybody to feel uncomfortable, and I'm sitting in this restaurant, blah, 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 blah. But P.F. Chang's is fairly expensive. I mean, it's It's more expensive than a Chili's. It's probably the nicest place I've ever eaten, actually. But I just order like a dessert, like a cheap dessert. And then while they're eating their main meals and their appetizers or whatever, I would just make that dessert last the whole time we were there. And if I was hungry, so I'd just make myself some dinner before I left, and I'd eat that. And now people might be like, "Oh man, well, they got food at PF Chang's and got to be normal, and I got to be weird and travel to like 35 different countries over the span of 2.5 years." So trade-offs, yeah, wouldn't change it at all. So yeah, I don't feel a need for entertainment, but if I was with people, I would participate in certain things that I deemed worthy, though. That's what I'm saying. Like if they just, people throw their money away on entertainment, and they're only doing it not really because they enjoy the entertainment, just because it's something to do. That's it. So it's out of boredom or out of trying to fit in or, whatever. They're motivated by a variety of things. And sometimes I do want to participate in something to not make other people feel uncomfortable. But if you're my close friend, I do feel like you should know me too. And so there's give and take on both sides of that. So the total living with no job. Okay, and then if I did have a job, like I said before, it would be the same thing. I would still keep that giving and charity at 10% of my income, whatever that income is. The savings would still be 10%, whatever the income is. The investment would still be 20% of whatever the income is. And my rainy day slash career could still be half of that paycheck, about 50%. So now, if I already had my career and I already had a business and everything was running smoothly and I already had my rainy day, all this stuff to prepare for a disaster in case I lost a job or something like that, didn't want to lose my house. So again, that rainy day is 3 months worth of expenditures, so that if you lost your job, you would have 3 months of being able to pay all your bills so you wouldn't get kicked out of your home. And I honestly think 6 months is a better plan, but at least 3 months. So if I had that and I had my career and everything like that, what would that extra 50% or half of my income go towards? I could entertain, I can go travel some more, I could do some stuff like that, but I'm still not a huge spender. I enjoy finding deals anyways. So I would put that towards savings and investments. Maybe I'd create a quick charity organization, pay some really smart people to come together to solve world poverty or something. I mean, I say that flippantly, but that is something that I really think about, having some sort of organization where I can have a bunch of really intelligent people come up with some solutions to some of the problems that we have. But I don't think money is always the solution, but sometimes solutions do cost money, so.